Hi, and welcome to my video on the ADIT-permitted tax. This is a pretty interesting concept. You probably took exams in your life, and it's very rare for the exam to allow you to bring some texts and materials with you in the exam room. ADIT is pretty unique here. There are other, of course, tax and legal exams that allow something like that. But for me, for example, I'm coming from economics and finance background. That was pretty interesting. So in short, ADIT-permitted texts are books and materials that you are allowed to bring and use during the exam. And this is extremely helpful, obviously, because to be honest, most of the answers, the vast majority of the answers to the ADIT exam questions are in that permitted text. For example, OECD guidelines, the transfer pricing book, which is in our heart all the time. We need to remember about it as transfer pricing professionals. It has most of the answers to any transfer pricing question. However, the trickiest thing about permitted text is that during the exam, you do not have time to read them, right? So you, in the best case scenario, you can quickly find something useful there, like a list of things or just to recall something quickly. You cannot read them, because if you start reading them and finding like detailed answers to your questions, then you probably are running out of time already, and that's not a good strategy, which we discuss in other video about time management during the exam. However, it's still very valuable to have them, because there are a lot of things in permitted texts that you may not want to memorize, or you may have difficulties memorizing, and having those permitted texts with you can help you answer those type of questions, especially if you know how to navigate the permitted text quickly, and if you can find information there. If it's not like the first time you see those permitted texts, then they're literally useless for you, and you're probably failing your exam anyway. As an example, let's take an example. So let's take transfer pricing exam as an example, and let's assume you have some question about low value adding services. This is not an extremely big concept, but it is a pretty specific thing, and there is a list of criteria that services must meet to be qualified as low value adding. You may remember them, but you may not be sure. But like if you remember all of the criteria and maybe you missed something in your head, our human memory is not ideal for remembering detailed lists, especially if you're not using this concept every day. So the best thing you can do, take permitted text with you, the OECD guidelines, and then know where to quickly find that particular answer, right? So that will ensure that you answer this question quickly, and this is the right use of permitted text. So what are those permitted texts? CIOT, the CIOT, always confusing this abbreviation, Chartered Institute of Taxation, the organization behind ADIT, publish a list of resources that you can take with you, the list of permitted texts, or usually books. And I will just give you examples of those texts that are really useful and their usefulness, basically. So the first one that I mentioned was OECD transfer pricing guidelines, especially for transfer pricing exam. You must have it in some way, either as a separate book or as a part of bigger material, which I'll discuss in the next few minutes. So that's essential, like you must have it in one way or another. Then there are a few recommended things. Model tax convention on income and on capital, useful to have. Sometimes you have questions, especially on transfer pricing exam, with some aspect of model tax convention where you may need to find it quickly. You recommended to take it. Report on attribution of profits or to permanent establishment. There is a chance you will get a question on PEs, permanent establishments, and if you know what you're talking about and what the question is about, there are some answers in that material that you can find. And then there are those BEPS reports, right? So 15 actions and you can take some of them to your ADIT exams. Can be useful. Again, if you will get a question on BEPS specifically, then you may find some useful information there. But again, OECD, strictly essential. Most of the students are taking just OECD guidelines, but if you have and want to take the rest, I think like just building on the previous point I've made, don't take them without like reading them, or at least like reviewing them in the detail, because then they are useless to you during the exam. Make sure you know those sources so that you can use them during the exam. Model Double Tax Convention by United Nations and United Nations Practical Transfer Pricing Manual. Good to have, but not even in the recommended category for me. Most of the transfer pricing questions are answered by OECD guidelines. Does the United Nations have any additional things to say to OECD guidelines? Yes, for sure. There are things like SIX method, some developing countries specific guidelines, and a few other areas that are more interesting, like even DEMPI functions. They have their own idea behind that. So there is a very small chance that you will get some question about United Nations versus OECD framework. That's where it can be useful. But again, you probably will have a chance not to choose this question, because ADIT exam allows you choosing some questions, which we will discuss in a separate video. So, summarizing, United Nations materials, good to have. Again, if you have them, take them with you, but know how to use them, know what's there, know how they are different from OECD guidelines and OECD Model Tax Convention. And then the last hint or solution is Van Raad's materials on international TP and EU tax law, which is a very thick book, which someone borrowed from me but didn't return to me. So I could show it to you, but I don't have it. Or maybe they did. Give me a second. All right, I've got it. No, I said someone borrowed but didn't return, but just because a lot of people were borrowing it from me for the exam. But yes, I have it. Just have a look at like the thickness of this book. It's massive, and it has a lot of things. So it has OECD model commentary, it has OECD guidelines, it has United Nations commentary actually, so that's useful. OECD guidelines. It has attribution of profits to permanent establishments report, and a few other things that maybe or may not be useful during the exam, but it basically has everything that you need for transfer pricing exam and international tax exam, and you're allowed to take it in the room. It's not very nice to read because the font is pretty small and the papers are very thin, because again, what's the number of pages here? Let's just 2,500 pages, crazy. But anyway, very useful book. Use it, take it, buy it. It's just 85 pounds, I think, as of today, and it will serve your tax career. The only thing that, like, my version is 2018-2019, so there is always like buy the most up to date at the moment you're buying it, and yeah, that's the best option. You will save a lot of money on the buying separate books if you don't have them, and then it's just useful to have for any tax professional. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say about Van Raad's materials. You can check there is other volumes, volume B, volume C. I think maybe volume C was also useful for some exam, but again, volume A is a must. And then the last question: can I print those textbooks from electronic versions, because most of them, or text, sorry, not textbooks, and take the self-printed copies? Generally, Chartered Institute of Taxation tells that they prefer original texts officially published. Therefore, it's strongly recommended to have it. And then again, like if Van Raad kills all the or ticks all the boxes or kills all the birds, then maybe that's your way. But if you want to print something, like, because there are some things that are not in Van Raad and you even like cannot really buy them. Like I think BEPS reports are pretty challenging to find in like officially published way. So print them and then get CIOT, Chartered Institute of Taxation, my favorite abbreviation, approval. You just send them an email before the exam saying that, hey, I'm going to use this printed material. You can make a photo of it, I don't know. And tell them that you're going to use it because you couldn't find it or could not afford buying it. And if they're okay, and they will typically tell you, yeah, you're fine to use them. So do it. It just doesn't cost you anything to get this approval, and gives you a comfort that you can use that in the exam. Because if you're taking the exam on screen from home, that's one story. If you're taking it from the exam room, that's the other story. We'll not go into that discussion of like what you are really allowed to use in your room when no one looks at you. When I was passing exams, I had to visit to another city to go to another city to pass the exam, and the rules there were crazily strict. They were like reviewing all your printed material so that you didn't make any notes or didn't put any like papers there. But now, like for the last few years, people were passing the exams on screen from home. So, well, again, the rules are pretty loose now. But again, you better just go the route that is the safest, which is get the permission from CIOT. I think that's it. So just a couple of words about my course. So you may get permitted tax, and you should get them, but preparing just based on this book to the exam is crazily challenging endeavor. That's why you may want to take a professional course on transfer pricing specifically with starttax.com. There you can see the course that substantially reduces the time that you will need to spend to prepare for the exam and substantially increases the chance for you passing the exam on the first try. 98% of my students pass the exam on the first try, and what's more, you are also getting much less stress while preparing and then during the exam. So consider this option, and there I also share more successful strategies on how to prepare and how to pass. Thank you, and bye for today.